Okay, hi everyone. This is Theresa J. Morris with Janet Carroll Lesson, and we've agreed to come and share a weekly show with you. And this will help us as archivists. We're both authors and we're both radio show hosts, and we've been together for over 8 years. And what we're going to do is help each other with topics that may or may not apply to you, but if it does, great. You can listen to our show weekly, and we will put them on our syndication. She and I both have assets that we pay for, and we don't mind telling you that we have a great accounts in podcasting. So this is going to be with us discussing topics that are interesting to us that may or may not have happened to you, and they're like unsolved mysteries to us. So, Janet Carroll Lesson, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and this will be given to you as a live recording to do what you want with as an oral book. And I want to start with symbols that have come to us metaphysically or spiritually or however, but we're going to learn to talk to each other. So, Janet, introduce yourself for this recording.
Hi, I'm Janet Carolesson, and I'm over here in Maui, Hawaii. And I've been doing radio podcasts and broadcasts with Theresa J. Morris for 8 years since it was June something, third or fourth or something of 2012 when we were coming up with the pending apocalypse or whatever the transformation was of 2012 that was being spread around the world back then. But right now we're here in 2020. It's 8 years later. And we were just having a spontaneous conversation about symbols. So, TJ, I want to go back to your symbols that you said, and then that segued into my symbols. So, you were go back and what were you talking about symbols? What symbols
Okay.
happened for you?
Okay, I
Were
was going
out
to
of
start.
mine.
I was going to start with her symbols, but this is impromptu, folks. This is our first one. All right, so my symbols, it changed my life. I was in Hawaii, where Janet lives now, but she's in Maui. I was in Oahu, and I was running a company. I'm an entrepreneur, but I was in the Department of Navy. So just to give you a little background, but I had this inside energy directing me with my outer guides interest on a journey, a spiritual journey. And it was during the time when Celestine Prophecy had come out, I think 89 or 90, I don't remember to tell you the truth, but uh, there was a real spiritual awakening, ascension feeling. And I didn't know the word ascension, but it came to me in a prophetic epiphany where my partner and I, we had a company. I had Psychic Network, and it was a company. I registered a name in Hawaii, and so I was growing it and having fun going down to make brand designs, things like that. But I didn't know what I was going to use for my Psychic Network. But I had Ascension word come up when. Now this sounds odd, but the symbol came to me. We had pulled up in my Cadillac. I had just gone and got a new Cadillac because I was in the Navy, so I had a little money, a little paycheck coming in. So I went over and I parked with, his name was Calvin. I won't give all your his information because I don't know if he's retired or still works for the government or anything, but he was a government employee. And we were sitting in my Cadillac when it was a beautiful sunny day, and lightning hit right where we parked with a tree along the street, Waikimilo, and it was a corner, and we were sitting in front of a print shop to go in to get some kind of symbol made, but I didn't know what it was going to be yet because we were working on it in our mind. And so it was available to the universe, so to speak. It's a very metaphysical situation. But lightning hits out of a sunny day, splits a tree right next to us between the asphalt and the parking lot. In there's grass with a tree and then a sidewalk and then the street that goes up to Waikimili and crosses it. It was the main road that went back into Honolulu along where the mall was, Ala Moana Shopping Center. But it came straight out by us and crossed Waikimilo, and that was on the corner where the lightning hit the tree, And then it started raining really hard, and police showed up to put the fire out. And we were sitting there, and this all happened within about 15 minutes because it caught us off guard. We were before we were going in talking about what we were going to, go in and try to get done on a logo and all this because my partner wanted me to concentrate on Jungle Beach, which was my company with him. But I had this. I said, I've got to get this done. I'm being drawn. And he knew how I'd get as a psychic. I was being a psychic at some of the bookstores. So I had this journey I was on, and that Celestine Prophecy book had come out. And so I was really thinking about being guided by this higher source, this spiritual metaphysical energy. And so when we saw this tree split with lightning, and my name's under Thurman Thor's protection, I put it all together and was going, wow, I'm glad I'm protected. I was sort of making a joke about Thor and Thor's protection and my name. And he said, yeah, because if we hadn't been this kind of with this rubber, we could have been killed. We could have felt the lightning, and because it came from nowhere. We weren't expecting it. But we went on in, and this symbol, we didn't know what the brand was going to be or anything. And we went up to this counter, and this little guy from India was sitting back then it was like 89.90, right in there, 89 to 90, all the way up to 93, but I think it was 90. And he said, what can we do for you? And I said, well, I want you to help me create a brand and a logo for my Psychic Network, was what it was called, Psychic Network. And then this, he was like, well, what do you want? I said, I don't know, sort of like a pyramid with, I always use a pyramid. I already had one I showed him my JB Court, my pyramid with the palm trees. And so he was going to sit down. He says, well, I don't know if I could, I've got to sort of know what he was trying to pencil something out. But he sat down to the computer listening to me, and the word Ascension Center came up. And I don't even know how it all got involved, but it was with my mind. And I know that I was really interested in trying to find out what this word was in my head, but I didn't know what it meant. And neither did Calvin, and neither did he. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this symbol comes up on his computer, and it shocked him so bad. I said, yeah, that's it. How did you do that? He said, I didn't, but he pushed himself so hard away from, he was in a little steno chair. He was just on a little typing table with his computer. And this is back when we had like MS-DOS. And but he said, I didn't do that. I couldn't do that. And he fell on his butt when the chair ran out because it just blinked on there. And we don't know where it came from. He said, I couldn't do that in a million years. That's really complicated. So this symbol was like a pyramid. And I said, yeah, but that's it. It was in my mind. Somehow he said, you're a witch. You're a witch. He said, my wife is something in India, something to do with some kind of special metaphysical stuff, Joy Tish or something. But he says, you have that metaphysical, he called it something, Joy Tish or something from India, some kind of magic. And I said, really? I said, well, we're going to do my flyer. That's, I want to put this on my flyer. Can I have a copy of that? He said, yeah. And then we made a flyer, 3-piece, so I could take it to Quick Copy. Or what was it? It was like another place, or he could print it, but they were more expensive per flyer. So we went to the cheaper place to do them a nickel a piece or something. But the symbol was real complicated with these waves coming out of this pyramid, and I still use it today. And it's got Ascension.Center or Ascension Center. And I asked Janet to help me with my. That was sort of my emotional, spiritual quest called the Ascension Center, and we have been teaching it ever since. But I got people involved with me with just telling this symbol, and I started teaching classes on Ascension Center and aliens and Psychic Network, and it grew to be a really big movement. And the only other guy when I could find the word ascension, of course we know there's Ascension Island and there's ascension with Christ rising. So I took it to mean that we were about consciousness raising. And I worked with all this auras and colors and teaching how to work with all these waves and things, but I never thought of it radio until 2012 in Janet, and we were doing all that. So I still use the symbol, but we don't know where it came from. He blamed me, and I said, "There's no." He said we didn't. He wasn't connected to the internet. It was before Windows 95, and when we had the internet, and I was asking for the internet, so I knew things. But I'm very curious about where this symbol came from and why the inference on the words. And Ascension Center made sense. So I had Ascension Center and I had Psychic Network, and I made up a 3-page, you need to take an 8.5 and 11, fold it 3 ways. And I passed these out, and I got people to come to my workshops. And Dr. Laura Sturgis gave me an office next to hers. And we taught the Ascension classes, and they were a lot of fun. Of course, right now in COVID-19, we can't teach it. But Janet's in Maui, and her story with this symbol is because she wound up marrying the guy that was going to help me run the Ascension Center. And it was Ascension Center Education, ACE, which became ACE Folklife later on in Kentucky with my husband, because we did folklife music and bluegrass music, so we combined our music. But Janet wound up meeting Dr. Lesson and moving to Maui after this sign or during this sign, because we kept it and had meetings all the way up to the time I moved to the mainland in 94. Now, Janet got some, and then later on I get symbols on the wall, but let Janet tell her story, and then I'll come back to symbols on the wall later in Kentucky, because I've only had it 2 times, but I'm on a quest with Janet to find out these unsolved mysteries in my life. So, Janet, now why don't you combine your story, and then I'll go back to the one with the gold light in the house with Tom.
Right. So I'm over in Pennsylvania. I'm in my second marriage, um, and I was having an internet affair with a guy from Hawaii because I was married and miserable. I was just I felt trapped and depressed, and then the internet came into my life because I worked at Penn State University. I went on these UFO discussion groups because I've always been interested in ufology. I meet this guy, Ed. He's an adept at astral projection. What was that called? There was a.
Well, speak up a little bit. You're.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was adept at astral projection. There was this. It was a system back then in the 70s on spirituality and consciousness, and they taught astral projection. I think all these are spin-off groups from the government who was trying to find the psychic people for their Project Stargate and their remote viewing program. So they would have these under the name of New Age and Spirituality and Consciousness, these different people that were teaching like psi seminars, and I forget what the name of his was in the East Coast. And so anyway, I'm starting to have a relationship with him, but it's not physical. It's like an internet romance. This is 1989 to 93. And one night, August 31st of 1993, which was my last August, I had this experience where I was taken out of my bed. I felt I was physically there because I could feel the the heat of the summer night. The wind was going across my body. It was just perfect temperature. And I was taken from Pennsylvania to Mount Madonna. And what was that called? Anyway, Mount Madonna over there in California, Santa Clara Santa Clara. And I know what it was because later on I was taken to that place. And when I arrived at that place in 3D reality, I went, oh, I've been here before. And I said, this is where they brought me when they took me in my abduction. So when I was there, they gave me a Close Encounters of the Third Kind type show of all of these craft. I was out on the deck. I was looking down the hill. and overhead was just full of UFOs zooming back and forth. Every kind of, there's not just 4 or 5 craft. There was just all these designs, and they were zooming around. And I'm looking up, and a large mothership that was similar to the Close Encounters, but different. Came at the end, and then the sky cleared, and it became like when you go to the opening scene of Star Wars, and it's the letters scroll across the sky, but they're in human English words. These were in some kind of symbols, and it was a language, and it was like the sky was full of cookie cutters of these symbols. So the light came from up above, and I'm down below, and the symbols are shining down into the meadow down below, and but I'm able to see them, and I said, "What does this mean? I don't know this language. What does it mean?" And they said, "Don't worry, it will be eventually revealed to you what this means." And I've yet to find out what it means, but so I had this incredible experience. I felt elated, and then next thing I know, I wake up and I'm back in my bed. So that was my symbol experience. Back to you, TJ.
Okay, well, I believe this is important because they're like unexplained, unsolved mysteries or high strangeness, but I don't know if we'll ever find out everything in this lifetime. But as the baby boomer age, I'd like to know some of these answers. So maybe we can get some help from other people. And we'd like to know your comments, but we'd like you to email them to us. But the next one I had, it's been years. Now remember, I'm on this metaphysical spiritual quest, especially in Hawaii, and I was very in tune with this energy, this spiritual energy or this guidance. So we all have guides, but I wasn't into the ascension age yet, but I learned that's what it would be called, the ascension age, and tuning into my higher self. And it was years went by. I'd moved back to the mainland from Hawaii with the government. The government paid for my move through the Department of Defense, Department of Navy. And so we came back to the mainland, and the first thing my husband did was took me to Dolores Canyon, of all people. And so Dolores and I got there too late. We were coming cross country, and he didn't tell me we were going to this UFO thing, and we didn't make it. But apparently it was the Ozark Mountains, something she'd been doing for years, helping people with strange, so we could find out hypnotically, I guess, what these symbols were. With my husband that's now deceased, his name was Gerald Orr, Gerald W. Orr of Oklahoma. He was from the Phillip Petroleum family, and apparently GS-13, I think, high up in the Department of Navy. 9/11/13, they go up to, I don't know how high they go up, but anyway, I had divorced him after this happened because it was highly strange. And anyway, we came across to Dolores Cannon's office, and she said we just missed it. He said he knew we were supposed to be there, and I knew nothing about it. So I felt odd meeting this woman. I had no idea who she was. I know I'd had lots of, he knew when he married me I was a psychic, and I read books, and he told me I was too good to be working there for the Department of Navy, and yet we were going cross country paid for by moving from across. I mean, how did we get everything paid for if we weren't still in the military? So I don't know what all's going on, but apparently something's going on with these symbols enough that people are interested to pay for my move to the mainland. So anyway, Dolores Cannon was so nice, and we talked for a little while, and it was she was, oh, I guess we came in after a Friday, Saturday, Sunday or something with Ozark thing, and she was wanting me to meet her daughter. It was very important for me to meet her daughter, and her daughter had gone out until she didn't know we were coming in, and Dolores was at her office by herself. But she wanted to put me under her, but he said no. We don't have time. We're passing through. We've got another appointment. So he drove me through the neighborhood and all of that. But I always remembered Dolores Cannon, And the symbol, because one of her questions was like why we were there, but that I was curious that she did that, and I didn't know why I was there, so that was curious enough about the symbols. Uh, but anyway, after that, nothing happens to me for a while. I start writing for UFO Digest, and it's years go by. In 2011, I think I'll have to go back and look. But right before the man that died, his name was Dirk Vanderplug. He had me writing for UFO Digest, and I think Stanton Friedman recommended me to him to help me get my stuff written down because Stan thought it was important, and I wasn't a writer at the time. I was on the road as a truck driver. By the time I talked to Stan during this time, I'd been on the road as a truck driver, but I had gotten off the road, and these symbols where I was living in Kentucky with my husband. One afternoon, I was writing the article. I wrote a weekly article in UFO Digest. I need to go back and find it on this symbol. Janet and I have a lot of our own research to do for years and years.
Yeah.
But the symbols came on the wall. Now I remember one was there were like gold light, and I was there was you walk in. This house was small. It's a living room on the front, then a little kitchen behind that. On the left side was uh, 3 bedrooms and a bath, and on the right side you walk from the living room through the kitchen back to the den on the back end. And so I looked. I had my computer set up in the living room right by the door to the kitchen. So I saw these symbols on the wall, and it's in the afternoon, and the sun was already, it wasn't setting, but it was 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But my husband was outside doing something on his motorcycle or something. But I, I looked outside and I looked around to see where these symbols were coming from. And they're like if you're in a room in mid afternoon and it's shady, and right before you start turning on the lights, it was sort of the house was like that, but I could still see on my computer. So it was still afternoon light. And it showed like a gold lamp. I've got a lamp on right here next to me, and it's like a gold a lampshade with a sort of a golden light coming out of this light here in my room, and it shines on the wall. And everything else in my room right now is white walls, but they're shaded. So it was like that. And so it wasn't like a 3D physical uh, hologram. It was like the light from a lamp. It was like gold lamplight making symbols. So I ran to the kitchen to look out the window, and it was still sunny outside. And, it's afternoon sun, but it was sunny. So I looked and I saw a bowl of water for my little dog. And I thought, well, that must be it. So I moved it, and it didn't change anything. Because, you're looking for a logical, what scientific. I'm very logical, and being an investigator most of my life, I tend to break things down to look for the cause and effect. And I shaded, I ran my hands up and down the light in front coming in through the one little window, kitchen window, and it didn't affect the wall at all. So I was like, well, where's this coming from? But I want you to know, I looked diligently for something to make these symbols, and they were changing. It was like something off of a lava lamp or something, I don't know, but it was something coming from somewhere, and they went from infinity to making these symbols that were like this sign I got back in Hawaii. The symbols, but they were like uh, there was infinity, and then there was a big thing that came up, and I thought of Mothman. It came out like it. I didn't take trigonometry, but it was making like the Pentagon sign. It was making different symbols in Egyptian hieroglyphics and just different signs. And I didn't think of anything that I'd seen until, these came up, and I was trying. Then it it was making things, and it had an intelligence. And then it went into a big gold ball and then shrunk to a ball when my husband walked in the door. And it went over and hid in the kitchen. When he opened the door, it shocked whatever this intelligence was. And it went over behind this. I had this metal bread cabinet looking thing, or these bars where you can put loaves of bread or pies or something, a baker's uh, rack. That's what my mother always had one, so I thought I had to have one right inside the kitchen. And it hid over behind it. It looked like it was hiding. And I said, Tom, come here quick. I said, I've had these symbols on the wall. Can you see that? He said, no. He looked up. I said, you can't see it. I said, see that? Well, what about that little circle right there? Don't you see it? He said, no. So he didn't know what I was talking about. He walked on through the house, but I couldn't make him understand. I was like, but I'm getting these symbols on the wall. And he didn't even care. So it was like it wasn't for him. But anyway, this thing went up once or twice again, and then it went away, and I never saw it again. So I literally wrote an article on it so I wouldn't forget it. I knew I wasn't supposed to forget it, but there was nothing came into my head about it, about what it was. And I remember thinking back then there was a TV show called Chuck about this guy that would get symbols and they'd come into his head off of a computer or something. So it was like that. It would mean something later. But I'll tell you what it reminded me of, because later on, my birthday is on December 26th. Now, this is just somebody that's logical trying to figure out all these strange things that happened to her before I pass on. And so Janet's trying to help me because she's been my friend for years and knew I was on a spiritual quest in Hawaii, and she was too. And we crossed paths through people synergistically involved in Spiritual World Network just briefly. But even that was almost like we had to remember other people. And I remember a memory in my head of meeting her, and then we go into another meeting place, and she said key words like table tapping, your spiritual center. We had Spiritual World Network group. We had psychic readings. So we had Hilton Hawaii Village, and I put out flyers. And in Hawaii, there was only so many psychics, and I was training them, and I had an ad in the paper, and I had flyers. But it was me and one other girl down in Waikiki with psychics. So it brought us together. But now we're discussing symbols, and she and I have been involved with promoting Alien Civilizations Exist, ACE, the acronym for ACE Folklife, and helping people with their stories in the alien contact